Good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, August 25, 2020 Urbandale City Council meeting. And I'll ask the clerk to take roll call, please.
Blake?
Here.
Carberry Montgomery?
Here.
Obrecht?
Here.
Hoagie?
Here.
Russell?
Has joined the meeting.
Russell here.
Thank you.
All right. Ask if you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance as you're able. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Of the United
Mike
States
Young with Panera Bread of Iowa.
Has joined the meeting.
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Urbandale is a national leader in character counts, endeavoring at all times to promote and model the principles of trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. In conducting tonight's meeting, we expect that all participants will act in a respectful manner consistent with these principles. Item 2 is to approve the agenda. Is there a motion? And a second?
A motion by Blake. And second by Carberry Montgomery.
Okay, discussion, please vote.
Move my nay over to a yay. Starting the meeting strong.
Okay, that passes. Thank you. Item 3, presentations. We do have a very special proclamation for the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. I'd like to read that at this time. Whereas the centennial anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment represents a historical milestone, and whereas on July 2, 1919, Iowa was the 10th state to ratify the 19th Amendment, which ensured the right to vote cannot be denied or abridged based on sex. And whereas the ratification of the 19th Amendment, signed by President Wilson on August 26, 1920, was the culmination of decades of work and struggle by advocates for the rights of women across the United States. And whereas Iowa was home to many important suffrage leaders, including Amelia Bloomer, Sue Wilson Brown, Carrie Chapman Catt, Mary Jane Coggeshall, Anna Lother, Arabella Babb Mansfield, and Gertrude Rush. And whereas the city of Urbandale has a strong legacy of women leaders and elected officials, including the following Urbandale City Council members: Beta Wilson, serving from April 1928 to January 1929. Mrs. Williamson, serving from February 1929 to April of 1930. Eileen Lemon, serving from January 1958 to January 1960. Marilyn Cole Morgan, serving from September 1991 to December 1999. Susan Siepke, serving from January 2000 to December 2003, and Mary Polson, serving from January 2004 to December 2011, and Bridget Carberry Montgomery, serving currently since January 2020. So now, therefore, I, Robert Andeweg, Mayor of the City of Urbandale, on behalf of the Urbandale City Council, commemorate the 100th anniversary of the passage and the ratification of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. I have signed that, and I'm proud to have signed that, and there's been a lot of discussion nationally, but it's also good to proclaim our involvement in that as well. So thank you for that. I know we have some folks tonight that have especially joined us for the meeting, and I appreciate their input on that as well. At this time, we'll move to Citizens Forum. This is the opportunity to address the council on something not a part of tonight's regular agenda. And Nicole, I don't think anybody has registered ahead of time. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so at this point, if you want to open up the phone microphones to see if there's anyone that would like to address the council at this time, I'd ask that. Is there anyone that would like to address the council at this time on something not a part of tonight's agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on then. Item 5 is the adoption of the minutes. First is are the minutes from the August 11, 2020 meeting. Ask for a motion in a second.
A motion by Poggi. Second by Carberry Montgomery.
Okay, discussion, please vote. That passes. Secondly, the August 18, 2020 Lunch and Learn meeting minutes.
A motion by Obrecht. Second by Poggi.
Any discussion, please vote. That passes. And finally, the August 20, 2020 meeting minutes.
A motion by Obrecht. Second by Blake.
Any discussion, please vote. And those pass, thank you. Item 6 is the consent agenda. We have 12 items for approval. Ask for a motion in a second.
A motion by Poggi, second by Russell.
Discussion, please vote. And that passes, thank you. Item 7 is a public hearing. The been continued to consider the adoption of the 2018 International Residential Code and the International Building Code and the existing building code, the swimming pool and spa code, the fire code, the electrical code, mechanical code, and the plumbing code. And to reintroduce this item is our Community Development Director, Steve Franklin. Steve, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council members. This is our long-awaited public hearing to consider the adoption of the 2018 Building Code. As you know, we originally intended to begin this endeavor back in March, and that's right when COVID-19 was breaking, and so kind of threw us a curveball, as it has many of our surrounding communities who are also going through this process, and has been delayed. But alas, excuse me, we are here and ready to have that public hearing tonight. Roger Schemmel, building official, is here with me tonight, and in just a second I'm going to turn it over to him to go into a little bit more of an explanation of each of the 5 ordinances. We tried to make this as transparent and simple for you as possible, so we do have a total of 5 different ordinances, each corresponding with the chapter involved. We did take Chapter 150, which involves the International Residential Code, the Building Code, the existing Building Code, and the Swimming Pool and Spa Code. We broke that particular ordinance, I think it's 30-some pages. We broke that up into the 4 different parts, with each section corresponding to that particular portion of that code. And then there was the separate ordinance for Chapter 92, the Fire Code, and then 152, 153, and 155, which are electrical, mechanical, and plumbing. So hopefully that made it a little bit easier for you. We also did include, for all of those with the exception of the Fire Code, an index, which kind of highlighted what the amendments were or would be, should you approve them, in accepting each of those codes, and then a summary of kind of what the action would entail for each of those. So as you know, I think the last thing I would say is just to reiterate what we talked about at the Lunch and Learn, is that, you know, one of the main reasons that we're doing this is that the Insurance Services Office evaluates communities every 5 years and gives a rating for both residential and commercial properties based on the code that's in play. Currently, we have a 4 for each of those. 1 is best, so you want to be as close to 1 as you can. And it frankly boils down to a situation where, because we are on the 2012 codes, we get into a situation, if we don't approve the 2018 building codes, we would drop to a 9 and a 9. And there are benefits to a community for having a higher score, so obviously that is our desire to be able to do that. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Roger Schemmel. I'm going to share my screen here and pull up the index forms for each of those, and just have Roger kind of hit the highlights of what each of these entails, and then obviously we'll certainly do our best to answer all of your questions. So let me pull this up, see if I can get this first one on here for you, Raj. Okay, there we go. All right, you can take it from here.
Great, thank you, Steve. Welcome, Mayor, members of the council. As Steve said, I'm Roger Schimmel, the building official for City of Urbandale here. This evening, we're going to be going through the amendments as we described, those sections, the 150 chapters, the 92, 152, 153, and the 155. Like Steve mentioned, we broke out the first ones to summarize some of the items I used an index method. This is not the code, but this is just like a cheat sheet to knowing what section to look for. So if you have a topic, you can look at it. And then the very left column is where you see the item number. That's a direct relationship to the code itself. So a little background on the code we're adopting is a 2018. We're currently on the 2012. Over the course of the 12, 15, and 18, there were some items that are in the base book itself that have been changed. But typically, we get a book, we get a significant changes manual that comes with it and describes many items that are changing in the book. Quite often, it's modifications. Quite often, there's clarifications. At times, there's additions, and sometimes there's deletions. So that's in the base book, and then when we look at that, then we do some amendments to it, either within the city standard amendments, or we've referred back to the Central Iowa Code Consortium for some issues too. So, in a little background in the base book, the wind speed. I noticed one thing that we did do is we changed the wind speed up to 115 with the new IRC. It used to be at 90. Now there are math functions to reduce that from 115 a little bit, but I think in the events in the last few weeks, it's a pretty good reason why we've been looking at that. Some other items that are in the base residential code is the glazing near wet surfaces was addressed. There's some clarifications. There's some heights near seatings on decks. Making the determination and the methods by how we determine the deck railing heights. There was provisions for monoxide detectors, deck framing, and the wall bracing of the entire structural items that were introduced in the base book. And also there's a new section, which is a new one, which is the roof access for photovoltaic solar panels on residential houses where we have access for the roof itself. As we go to the index, there were some items that I'd like to bring up is 21.1, which is near the bottom with the strike through. Urbandale has a current amendment that describes it. If you have a basement with a egress window, it needs to be within the bedroom. But if you do not have that, then there's a certain prescribed distance between the stair and another window that allows you to use that other window as the egress out of the basement window. When CICC went through the process, they looked at that, and it was a questioning component of what the purpose was on that. And it was basically for our older housing stock to be able to put a basement in it. And we recently don't use that provision too much. So we're suggesting on deleting that single provision. The other highlighted item to look at is right below it is 22. If you look at the second column, that's a new provision for townhomes. We're looking at the thresholds for each unit are at 8,000 square foot, which is previous, but it's also if you have 18 units or more, or 18,000 square foot in the entire building, it'll be a threshold for sprinkling. And then 23 repeats some items, which is the 8,000 threshold for single-family dwellings for sprinkler systems. And that calculation does include the garage calculation. 24 would be on the next page, is the floor protection. This was an item of heavy discussion during the CICC. There we have the top page. Floor protection. This came into the 2012 code. When we adopted it, we struck that section out, so we do not have floor protection at this time. When the 15 came out, it remained in the code, and when the 18 came out, which we're looking at adopting, it still remains in there. CICC did some review on it with many of the stakeholders and reviewed it and suggest that you do install the floor protection, and also to a certain standard of which it's 100% design load, which would require 2x10s to also have drywall. So all basements, new basements, would have drywall on the ceilings. Number 29, let's see, 32 is the next one. Is we mentioned this during our lunch and learn that CSST tubing, which is a corrugated stainless steel tubing, is there's certain standards now where the yellow is not allowed. It's only the black where the arc resistant material is used, and there's very specific grounding and bonding recommendations. So that's a general overview of the with the index of the IRC, so I'd be open for any questions you may have on that.
All right, thank you, Roger. Any questions from the council for Roger at this point?
Yeah, Roger, Adam Obrecht here. Just curious on the drywall and the ceiling. So if you have an unfinished basement during construction, you have to now finish the ceiling?
For new construction, that'd be true, but if it's a remodel, it only applies to new construction houses.
It's helped me understand how that helps.
A new construction, with the intention of the drywall or how it helps during a remodel?
Yeah, the intention of the drywall. I mean, in a new home, if you got an unfinished basement, sometimes you're running cabling and stuff like that later on, post construction, and the drywall seems to be in the way of that. So, how does having a drywalled ceiling help?
Yep. What the drywall ceiling is intended to do is give the length of time for the burn rating of the floor system, so that from the time a fire were to start and the time the response team's there to attack the fire, it gives more time for the floor system to be maintained, so it can still be support the loads of the firefighters in operation. We did some review on this in 2012, or when we adopted, we're looking at the 15. What we found at that time, and I did not do in a current review, we found that in the course of the first year to two of a new construction, nearly 60% of those ended up having drywall, either because typically walkout basements have the basements finished, or within the first year the basements are remodeled. So typically the basement does get the drywall in there during those two circumstances. The other 30% is when it's a raw basement, we'll say, or unfinished at that time.
Yep. Okay, and then I guess the second question is on the sprinklering. We kept the square footage the same, but we now include the garage in the square foot, or did we also up the square footage since we're including the garage?
The square footage remains the same as we have before, and the way we calculate it remains the same as before, which includes the garage as part of that calculation. When CICC made the recommendation, theirs was to describe as the garages would not be included. And that's some of the other communities have reviewed that.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks, Adam. Any other questions from the council at this point before we open up to the public hearing? All right, hearing none. Then this item is a public hearing. I'll open it up for any comments from anyone, either for or against. So we don't have anybody pre-registered, but I'll open up this to the public for comments at this time. Is there anyone that'd like to comment on this? Okay, hearing none, then I would ask for a motion and second to close the public hearing.
I have a motion by Blake, second by Pogge to close the public hearing.
Okay, discussion, please vote.
Mr. Mayor, I do have 5 in favor.
Okay, that passes. Thank you. All right, we do have to take a vote on each item, so there are a series of 5 motions and seconds that we'll need and votes on each of these. I'd ask for a motion and second first on ordinance 2020-10.
Yes. Quickly, Mayor, procedurally, if there are potential edits to this, is that next meeting we'd have a chance to do some of those too?
Correct. This is the first reading of each of the ordinances, so if there are any suggested changes and review, we can do that before the next meeting. We have 2 more chances, really. So we're only approving the first reading of each of these tonight.
I do have a motion by Blake, second by Pogge, to approve the first reading of ordinance 2020-10.
Okay. Any further discussion? Please vote. That passes. And then ordinance 2020-11. Okay.
Wanted to mention that the 2010 amendment, or that chapter includes the building code, the swimming pool and spa code, and also existing building code, which were 3 other indexes we should briefly review. So
Okay.
let me go over those and see if there's any questions on that.
Okay. That was 2020-10?
It's still part of 2020-10, yes.
Okay. You want to go over that?
Okay, I'll do that now, sir. The section 150.0, oops, bring my control back, or.
Give me just a moment and I will get that handed back over here, Roger, so you can share your screen again.
Okay. This was the part 2 of that same ordinance, which is 150.04. It's the portion of the building code. The one we just read was the residential portion. This is the building code portion. And this is pretty much standard through it. The one item of interest is number 22, is the storm shelters, which is now required in certain facilities, primarily in municipal government areas of police and fire, and also educational locations. And the Thank you, Nicole. I wasn't sharing. Sorry about that. This is the 150.04, the building code index we're looking at again. 22 down on the left, you'll see that that's the storm shelters. This is one item that the CICC spent a lot of time reviewing and actually had the stakeholders of schools involved, had very good input, and they actually had a good resolve on that. I want to bring that up. At this point, we would need storm shelters in those locations, particularly like educational. And as an example, though, the most recent elementary that's being constructed, they did include a storm shelter in that construction. So the stakeholders are well of it. The communities are well aware of it. That was the main item I want to bring up on the IBC. Then 150.05, which was part of that, is the existing building code. This is more of a formality. That chapter was removed out of the building code and now is a separate book. So we make reference to this as a chapter going to this book. And the main item in there is to be addressed as number 14, that we did change based on CICC recommendations that any existing R2 building, which is like an apartment building, which has fire damage to more than 3 units, and that's fire damage to more than 3 units, will be required to fire sprinkle within the next 2 years, the following 2 years. And then the last one, which was part of a cleanup, was the building code and residential codes removed those chapters where the swimming pool provisions, and now we reference the International Swimming Pool and Spa Code. That's basically taking that book straight up is the way it's written, with one item being defined that pools are defined as anything that's capable of handling more than 24 inches of water. So those are portions that were part of that 150 ordinance that was a subset of that.
Okay. Thank you, Roger. Sorry.
John Reck, before they would take a vote on Chapter 92, which is the fire code, is there anything that you would want to mention before they would do that?
Hi, this is John Reck, Fire Marshal. The only thing I would bring up as far with the proposed 2018 fire code and amendments is Roger's kind of already touched on some of the stuff and the summary sheet that has been presented, and there's a lot of carryover, so things like the sprinkler thresholds and even some of the stuff that Roger's already mentioned, not only is it in the building code, but in the fire code, and there really isn't much change from what we currently have with the 2012 or even what we proposed when we attempted to adopt the 2015 codes back in 2017. In the council packet, the Board of Appeals meeting notes on July 14th also have a breakdown that was presented for the amendments as well. But like I said, Roger's kind of breakdown sheet here does a good job of covering the main things. That's all I have at the moment, unless there's specific questions.
Okay, thank you, John.
Roger,
There's
this
no
is
any-
Ron Hoagie. I have one question, and that is, if 3 units in an apartment building are damaged, they have to put a sprinkler in. Do they still have to have in excess of 18,000 square feet, or is that any square footage in the complex you would still have to put a sprinkler in?
Good question. The way the amendment's written, if it's more than 3 units are damaged, then you would have to sprinkle that building. So if you actually had a 4-plex, it would apply, or if you had an 18-plex, it would apply as 3 units. It's not based on the square footage of the building.
So we could end up with a 4-plex, which has 3 units have smoke damage, and require that 4-plex to have a sprinkler put in. Is the cost of that such that landlords would just walk away from the building rather than do it?
Yeah, and given also if you have 3 units that are damaged in a 4-plex, that's 75%, I would expect. So there'd be a lot of other provisions that would be kicking in at that time. It'd be virtually a new construction at that time.
Okay.
All right, any other questions, comments? If not, I'd ask for a motion and a second on ordinance 2020-11.
I do have a motion by Blake and a second by Pogge.
Okay, discussion, please vote. That passes. Thank you. Anything further on, did we cover everything else then that you wanted to cover, Roger, or do you want to?
The last 3 pieces of indexes would be the electrical code.
All right, so we'll cover electrical next.
Yeah, the next 3 pieces are pretty straightforward. The electrical, mechanical, and plumbing codes, those are adopted by the state. We re-adopt basically this, we enforce the same provisions. Our adoption is basically giving us some administrative provisions in order to enforce it through inspections and permits. If there's any questions, I can take those now.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Roger on those items? If not, then is there a motion and a second on first reading of ordinance 2020-12?
The motion by Blake. Second by Pogge.
Discussion, please vote. Okay, that passes. Thank you. Then the next item would be first reading of ordinance 2020-13.
The motion by Blake, second by Pogge.
Discussion, please vote. That passes. Thank you. And finally, ordinance 2020-14.
The motion by Blake, second by Pogge.
Discussion, please vote. Okay, that passes. Thank you. Again, these are all passage of first readings. From what I'm hearing, there might be some comments or something about this later. If we have comments or questions before our next meeting, certainly get those into AJ and so we can pass it on to Steve and Roger and we can get those answered. But again, this is a significant movement forward. We do need to get these done. So I appreciate Steve and Roger's hard work on this so we can continue this forward, and also everyone else that's been touched by this as well, including fire and other officials. So thanks for everybody's input on that to get it to this point. We'll move on then to item 7.2. It's a public hearing to consider the Colby Woods Lot 2 Westmark Plaza amendment to the Planned Unit Development Master Plan. at 2839 86th Street. The public notice for this was published in the August 7, 2020 Des Moines Register, and ask for any objections to that notice as published.
There were none.
Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
I have a motion by Obrecht. Second by Russell to open the public hearing.
Any discussion? Please vote.
Move my nay over to an A, please. Thank you.
That passes. And to introduce the item again is Steve Franklin. Steve?
Okay, good evening. I'm going to present this particular item and the first planning and zoning item, 8.1, together because they are directly related, and then you can take the appropriate action on each. Let's see here, see if we can share content, if this is going to work. I've got a, let's see, I do have a, well, I may not be able to do it that way. I may need to go straight to, yep, all right, let's just try it this way. So what this is an amendment to the PUD, and the reason that the PUD is required, is it not sharing? Oh, okay, give us just a second here. Okay. Technology is wonderful when it works. So again, this is a PUD or an amendment, a requested amendment for this particular PUD. There are 3 lots involved with this. 3 office buildings there. This is the Panera building. There is a building immediately to the east, and there is another existing building immediately to the south. And those 3 buildings together were all part of the same site plan when they were approved, and part of the Westmark Plaza plat. The amendment itself is only for Lot 2 in Westmark Plaza, which is the lot that the Panera sits on, and specifically the amendment to this lot only is to allow a drive-through service as part of the restaurant. This is an issue that is directly COVID-19 related. Panera Bread, like some other places, has determined that they really do need to have a drive-through window to be able to meet the demand and have their business model be able to continue successfully. So what is being proposed as far as the site plan then, you see here on the screen, is to build a very small addition, about 66 square feet, on the south side of the building, remove approximately 10 parking spaces that exist on the south side of the parking, and put in this drive lane, which is this dark area that you see here. This is the window. And then the second part of the amendment is to allow a drive-through queue of about 130 feet. Typically what is required is 150 feet, so it's 1 vehicle length shy of what we would typically require. You can see here, you can probably make it out. Let me see if I can enlarge this just a little bit for you. There's a car right at the window, and then there are 7 vehicles stacked back, so they'd be able to get about 7 vehicles within that 130 feet. Panera did provide some information based, again, on their business model and not being the typical fast food type of restaurant. They do believe that the 130 feet is going to be sufficient. They did provide detailed information, which we did not make available to council. We certainly can, should you want to see it, but they did some specific studies at other restaurants and determined that there were never more than 6 cars in the drive-through during the period of time which they would order. And again, this exhibit includes 7. So that's it in a nutshell. Again, the PUD amendment specifically is for only this lot, which Panera sits on, which would be to allow a drive-through lane, which typically right now is not allowed by the PUD, and to allow a queuing length of 130 feet opposed to the 150 feet. And then the site plan itself is what you see here on the screen, which is how the drive-through window would actually work. Planning and Zoning Commission does recommend approval of both items and would be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Steve. Any questions from the council for Steve?
Steve, Dave Russell here. If we make this amendment, would other businesses in the PUD at a later date also be able to have a drive-through?
Not without coming back and requesting a separate PUD amendment, because again, this amendment only applies to Lot 2, which is only the Panera building.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments at this time from the council?
Yeah, another quick question, Steve. So if for some reason Panera is not the future occupant of this building, is there any concerns about the drive-through not being long enough?
Good question. You know, that's probably going to boil down to who the user is. You know, it's maybe, I think is the honest answer. You know, we'll have to see who goes in there. I think that's going to be a matter of realizing what you've got and just kind of, you know, if we get other tenants and other businesses that start to complain because things are being blocked, or certainly if staff goes by there and we noticed issues, then that's going to generate a conversation to see how we can alleviate that situation. Obviously, the hope is that this will be something to allow Panera Bread to stay there indefinitely and meet their business model. But I guess I would say the honest answer is we'll cross that bridge if we get there. It is certainly possible it could be a concern with another user, and if we find it to be a concern, we'll address it and see how we can get it resolved.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions at this time from the council? All right, this item is also a public hearing. I'd I'll open it up for any comments or questions from the public at this time, or does anyone like to comment on this item from the public?
Can I ask a couple questions? Shelley Pigneri.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me? I've never done this before, so I apologize. So
yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm the mall owner with Accents and Interiors, Panera's neighbor. So I want to just show this. Can you guys see this map?
No.
Okay, it's not working. Well, in any event, here's my main concern, which I have talked to John about, is that the odds are, realistically, in a drive-through, there are generally more than 6 or 7 cars, you know, and we would hope for my neighbor to have a good business. But would it turn out to be a Chick-fil-A? Who knows? But my concern is Panera and I share that property line of the driveway entering into his mall and my mall. I'm very concerned about access getting into my, as well as my renters, customers. And if that line would go out on the frontage road, it's not only going to be a problem getting in, but getting out. So one thing that came to mind is maybe a 10-foot curb cut to widen that driveway, which would take out a partial berm going into my center so that my people could get in. Another thing is, as I've seen, like when you go to Bebop's, they have a sign for which way the cars should go to, whether it be on the driver's side or vice versa. But would there be able to be a sign so people, you know, don't follow directions very well, so they know where they're hugging that building to get in line? But as I said, my biggest concern is that entry for access in and out. So presently, I am opposed to this. And in the future, I want David Wetch to represent me in my situation with it. So those are my feelings for this evening.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone else like to comment on this?
Mayor and City Council, this is Mike Young with Panera Bread of Iowa. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, yes.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for your time this evening. And Shelley, I just want to let you know that I certainly understand your concerns. But I can assure you, and I think Steve spoke to it with respect to, I guess you'd call it the expert information that was provided by Panera at the franchisor level, that the likelihood of us having more than 6 cars in that drive-through lane is remote at best. And I can promise you as well, Shelley, that if we thought there was even a 1% chance of the queue extending out into that frontage road, we would not want drive-through, because that would disrupt our business more than anyone else's in the entire plat. So we would not even be requesting if we thought that was even remotely possible. It's 6 or 7 cars is about what we have in drive-throughs throughout the country. And obviously there could be an exception now and then. If it ever got to that point, and again, I don't think it ever will, believe me, we would be the first ones out there either directing traffic or setting up cones or something so that traffic could not extend to that frontage road, because we need our guests to be able to get in and out as well. You mentioned signage, Shelley. We would be more than happy to install signage that would make it very, very clear as to where everyone who is entering and exiting the premises, how they would have to go about that. We'd be more than happy to provide that. No problem at all.
Okay, well, I respect your demographics, but you never know. And so I want some kind of a security from everyone involved that if indeed if this turns into a 12-15 car, which is going to put you out on the frontage road, then what kind of agreement can we reach that then is the city going to get involved, and are they going to allow that curb cut so my people can get in and out? I just want some kind of an assurance, because, you could be a whole lot busier than you think you are.
All right. At this point, maybe the two of you maybe need to speak offline on something to resolve something. We've had both your comments. I'd like to keep the comments addressed to the council rather than have a conversation between the two of you right now at this point. If you need some time to discuss that, that might be the thing to do to resolve something. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the council on the item? Okay, hearing none, then is there a motion to close the public hearing?
A motion by Blake. Second by Pogge to close the public hearing.
Any further discussion? If not, please vote. Okay, that passes. All right. Then there'll be, I'll ask for a motion and a second on the item.
A motion by Blake. Second by Obrecht to approve the amendment to Colby Woods PUD master plan.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, please vote.
Mayor, may I ask a quick question? Will the PUD part of this come back up for, it requires 3 readings, is that correct?
No, this is just one reading, so this will be, if it's approved tonight, that's it for tonight. So is there any further discussion before you take the final vote?
Well, my only concern with this run is that it seems like the neighbors aren't together on what's being done here. And since a change in the PUD is similar to a change in zoning, I just wonder if we shouldn't have them go back, figure it out, and come back to us with some agreement between them, so that the city isn't in the middle later on when, there are 12 cars backed up and they come to the city and want a solution.
Could I also, Steve Franklin, this is Dave Russell, if it became necessary for a curb cut of 10 feet as discussed, is that possible?
It potentially could be possible. I'm going to, Nicole, can I put that drawing back up there? I'm going to try to share content and go back to that so we can see it. Part of that is going to be, you know, getting with engineering and trying to determine how wide that existing entrance is that's out there right now. I would tell you, in my experience with situations like this, so this is 85th Street, also the, you know, known as the frontage road, and you come into the property right here, and as Shelley Pigneri noted, the property line kind of comes right down the middle of this entrance. So there's a curb line right there and a curb line right there. So you come in technically on her property and go out technically on Panera Bread's property. There's a covenant that allows everybody to move equally within the three parcels. In my experience, should there get a point to where there's more than 7 cars backed up, instead of backing all the way out here and out onto this frontage road, that's going to block this. I would say what's very much more likely is that cars are going to back up into the Panera parking back in here, I think is what's more likely to happen. Again, don't know that for sure until we would actually have that problem. I'm generally not in favor of creating a problem if we don't have one, but I would tell you, in my experience, for whatever that's worth, should they get out of this 130 feet, I strongly would suggest that cars are going to back up into Panera's existing parking lot rather than going out this way and getting out onto the frontage road. That said, even if cars are kind of, you know, back in here, the natural tendency is going to be to turn off of the frontage road and come into the property on the right side of that drive. So I don't foresee a situation where access to the building to the south would be a problem. And I think the only commitment I'm comfortable as city staff making at this point is, should we ever encounter that problem down the road, we will have a conversation with whatever business occupies the building at that time to get it resolved.
And Steve, I guess you've kind of presented both the PUD and the site plan together as one. Is it PUD is more allow for the drive-through and the site plan is more what we're talking about?
Correct. The amendment to the PUD would allow the drive-through to be there. The site plan itself is what you see here on the screen, how they would actually construct it on the property.
So the motion we got in front of us is more to allow the drive-through, and then our next motion is more of this discussion.
Correct. And we sometimes do take PUD amendments and site plans together at the same time. We're essentially doing the same thing, but it's still 2 votes.
All right. Remind me who made the motion in a second again.
I had a motion by Blake and a second by Obrecht to approve the amendment to the master plan.
Okay. Do we still want to, is there sentiment to vote? Do we move forward with the vote? Anybody want to?
Since I raised the question, this is Ron, I can tell you that I'm comfortable and we'll go ahead for it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so we have a motion by Blake, second by Obrecht. Any further discussion?
I do have several votes in. Are you still getting that option to vote if you have not done so already? Oh, there it goes. Okay.
Okay, the item passes. Thank you. Then moving on to item 8, the planning and zoning items. First is the 8.1, the Panera Bread drive-through site plan at 2839 86th Street. Steve, anything further to add? Okay, with nothing further to add, then any questions or comments from the council before a motion in a second? Now I'd ask for a motion.
So a motion by Blake. Second by Russell.
Okay, discussion. Please vote.
Councilmember Carberry, oh, there it comes through, and just a bit of delay. Thank you.
And that passes. Thank you. All right, item 8.2 is the New Hope Assembly of God parking lot expansion to a site plan at 4425 70th Street. Steve?
Sorry, forgot to turn the mic on. This is a site plan for adding parking spaces to the existing church on 70th Street. I will see if I can get the site plan up here for you. Is that Nicole or is it Sharon? Okay, good. Want to make sure. Okay, so this is the existing church located at 4425 70th Street. There was a conditional use permit approved from the Board of Adjustment several years ago, followed by a site plan for the existing church building that sits there today. Part of their long-term plan, which was indicated back at that time, was to do a future expansion to the building, which is not part of this site plan, and then also some additional parking spaces to the north of the building on parcels as they have been purchasing them to the north of the building. So this is for the parking lot, which is the dark gray areas that you see here. In total, there are about 153 spaces that are being added to the property to support their existing operation. There are no additional spaces needed. Parking for churches based on the zoning code is based on the size of the sanctuary. That is not changing. And so effectively what this does is takes all of the required parking spaces for the church, which is 326 overall. Currently, there are a couple of parcels to the south of Townsend. There's a street just to the south and two lots to the south of that. They meet their parking requirement today based on those other parcels south of Townsend, and what this would do would be able to get all of the required parking spaces on this parcel. Also required as part of the parking addition is an expansion of their detention basin. Engineering has reviewed that. At the time of the original site plan approval back several years ago, there were some concerns from residents adjacent to the east over here about drainage. They were required to put in detention as part of that original site plan. We are not aware, city staff is not aware of drainage issues that have occurred through there, and part of this expansion is modifying their existing detention such that they would be able to maintain the detention that is required by the city. And engineering obviously has reviewed that, the expanded detention capacity, and believes that things will continue to go as they have been and not have any drainage problems. Staff has been in contact with a couple of the neighbors, understanding what this project entails, and no neighbors chose to spoke at the Board of Adjustment hearing recently, and no one spoke at Planning and Zoning Commission either. So we'll just note that for the record. Planning and Zoning Commission does recommend approval, subject to the items noted. Would be happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Any questions for Steve from the council?
Steve, Dave Russell. So I understand they're going to create 150 new parking places. That's concrete. And you're saying then the existing drainage basin will accommodate the additional surface water that will be generated as a result of the additional parking spaces?
No, they actually had to expand their detention, and that's what you see right here in this corner of the property. This is new expanded detention that will account for the additional pavement. So it all drains this direction, goes into the basin, and then is outletted per the city's standard requirements. I believe, Dave McKay, if you're on, you can comment on this, but I think we required them to outlet at the same rate as before with the increased rainfall intensity. So we're feeling pretty comfortable with this, correct?
Yeah, this is Dave McKay. If you look at condition number 5, drainage report, revised calculations to be modified. So their drainage report is not finalized yet at this point in time. And so that's something that they need to do. And their detention pond may need to be larger than it's shown right here once they complete their calculations. And that may mean that parking stalls end up going away because they need more detention area here. Our requirement, though, is that the release rate not be increased from what's there today. This area to the east and north has a long history of some drainage problems back there. The city went in and a number of years back installed a backyard storm sewer down the area where this detention pond drains. And since that time, the area has functioned fairly well. But now that you're doubling the impervious area for what's going to the pond, we're making sure that that pond is large enough to be able to handle it, and that we don't increase the amount of water that we're letting out to the northeast.
And the applicant has agreed to the staff recommendations.
I can't tell you that for sure, but it's what needs to be done before they move forward. So I would assume so.
Hi there, this is
the same conditions were part of the planning. The same conditions were part of the planning and zoning item, and they did agree at that time at P&Z.
Okay.
If it's appropriate for me to speak, this is Denise Hurd on the line, the designer on the project with Confluence.
Yes, go ahead, Denise. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Yes, we have actually revised the plans. We've got our first round of comments back from the city on our site plan and have worked through what those new requirements are. The grading plan is updated and will be submitted to the city along with an updated stormwater management plan in the coming days. So we heard it and we agreed to it, and we're almost there, if that helps.
All right. Thank you. Are any further comments or questions from the council? If not, then I'd ask for a motion in a second.
I have a motion by Blake, second by Pokey.
Discussion, please vote. That passes, thank you. Item 8.3 is the Timberline Village PUD Plat 2 preliminary plat at 142nd Street and Douglas Parkway. Steve?
Okay, like I did previously, I'm going to briefly show you 8.3, 8.4, and 8.5, these last three P&Z items, because again, they are all directly related to each other, and then you can take the appropriate action on each of those. Let's go back here and try to share the screen. Okay. Okay, are we good, Nicole, there? We're good, okay, all right. So this is the plat. And what this does is create one buildable parcel. This is the southwest quadrant of the roundabout. So this is 142nd and Douglas. Douglas is up here. Here's 142nd. You can see the circle of the roundabout right there. This is that southwest quadrant, and right on that corner, this is a plat that will create one 2.45 acre parcel, and you see the outline of that parcel here right on the corner. And then there are two outlots. One is kind of this bigger space in the middle for future development to come along, and then this last parcel is another outlot, which is a regional detention basin for this entire parcel. So item number one is just the plat creating the one buildable lot and the two outlots, one for future development and one for a regional detention basin. The second item is a site plan for a Hy-Vee Fast and Fresh. You might recall there was a PUD amendment back the end of last year to allow a convenience store to be located within the first 600 feet of the roundabout, and that was approved subject to some conditions. And so this is the site plan for a Fast and Fresh. One of the conditions was that it needed to be associated with a restaurant or a coffee shop of some kind so that people could actually go to the premises and order food. One of the other conditions is that there needed to be an outdoor seating area, and that's this dark rectangle on the north side of the building that has a square footage of about 505 square feet. And so that also meets the requirements of the PUD. And then there's lots of language about pedestrian connectivity. And so you can see sidewalks here along the south side of Douglas that will connect over through the drive-through lane and get people to the building. There's also the walkway that comes across Douglas that would get people down directly to the outdoor seating area with an entrance into the building there. And then there's also access off of 142nd Street. And then there's additional landscaping that's being provided as well. I can go to that sheet here real quick. I don't know how well you can see this. Hopefully you can see it, but one of the requirements of the PUD, which remained in place, is that this needs to have 1.5 times the landscaping that a commercial property project would usually have. So there are numerous trees and shrubs on this property, part of which will help screen the use from the existing townhomes down here to the southeast, and just a number of shrubs and trees that will kind of soften what all of that looks like. And then I hope, yeah, and then these are the elevations for the Fast and Fresh. This is as you would see it in the front door. This is the what's quote unquote the backside that you would see from the roundabout. This is that outdoor seating area with the trellis above it. One of the comments you'll note is to try to be able to put some more glass on this backside. It is four-sided architecture that's required in the PUD. They've done generally a very good job with a predominantly brick building and glass, but we'd like to see a little bit more glass on this side of the elevation to make it look a little bit more like the front of the building so that we have a true four-sided architecture, but generally doing a good job. So we're excited as staff to have this be the first thing out there and kind of set the standard for what we hope the rest of the development out there will be, with a real emphasis on pedestrian connectivity and being able to provide food service for residents in that area. And then the last item, which I'll cover too, just real briefly, is that last parcel that's being created. It's Outlaw Y. And again, this is just going to serve as a regional detention basin for the entirety of that southwest parcel, so that as other things get developed in here to the south and west of the Fast and Fresh, all of that detention will go into a big basin that's down here adjacent to the creek. So with that, Planning and Zoning Commission does recommend approval of all three of those items. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Steve. Any questions from the council?
Steve, this is Adam. On the Outlaw X, kind of that north side, is there sidewalk connecting the trail all the way up to the Fast and Fresh at this time, or is that only if X develops?
That would be, if I understand your question correctly, that would be something that would come later. There is going to be sidewalk along 142nd Street, coming along here. That's going to connect up into the Fast and Fresh. But part of the language of the PUD is, as these businesses, whatever develops in here in Outlaw X, we do want that internal connectivity for sure. So that's one of the things we'll be looking at. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so if Outlaw X sits empty for 10 years, we wouldn't have a connection between so there's a trail just up to the west there.
Yep, gotcha.
There's no connectivity between the trail and the Fast and Fresh.
Yep, there wouldn't be. I think in part, now that's certainly something we could talk about, something that could be added to the CIP. Part of what we would want to do is just reserve the flexibility for, depending on how this develops, how all that might come up and work through there. So my hope is certainly when this starts coming out of the grounds, and our hope is that this is a 2021 project, everybody's been waiting for this, and we're going to see development in here fairly quickly and be able to know what that looks like.
Quick follow-up to Adam's question too. So the trail exits out on the other side of the street. What is the expectation for pedestrians getting across Douglas? Is it to go to the roundabout, or will there be some kind of civilian crosswalk in between?
Realistically, for safety purposes, and Dave McKay, add to this, but my thought would be you'd probably want them to come up to the roundabout and be able to safe crossly at that location. Dave, is that something you would agree with?
Yes.
And Steve, is 6 foot the standard width of the sidewalk now? I thought they were 8.
Actually, no. Yeah, it is. Well, our trails are generally 8 or 10. Standard sidewalks, residential sidewalks are 5 feet. But again, because this PUD has such an emphasis on the pedestrian connections, this PUD does require the 6-foot sidewalks.
Okay.
For this area.
Steve, this is Ron. Who's going to maintain responsibility for this detention pond?
As things developed, for all of these types of developments, we require a maintenance covenant agreement for ownership of the parcels. And so right now, it's going to be, this initial party. But as things develop, what generally happens is those agreements just get updated so that everybody has a share in maintaining it.
Okay.
This is Bridget. As someone who's driven by this site almost every day for 12 years, I'm very excited to see something finally get developed at this intersection. But I'm a little concerned about the lack of connection on that south side of Douglas. Now, when Adam asked you the question, you mentioned the CIP. So it would be a possibility, I guess, that we could pay to put in a sidewalk until a development goes in there.
Well, I think you'd have the right at this point in time. This is Dave McKay. I think if we went through the CIP, that would be a process where we turn around and just assess back to NAP properties. So if you want a sidewalk now, I would make it a condition that the sidewalks have to be connected at this point in time. I was in the back of my head, I'm trying to get to the memo right now, but I thought that was required as part of the site plan, but maybe I'm wrong.
Correct. Nope, you're right, Dave. Part of what the requirement of the site plan, and again, this is the corner, what's on your screen. This is the Fast and Fresh parcel, and you can see the dark gray here. But part of the requirement is to continue this sidewalk along Douglas, all the way to the west to the end of that parcel, and then also to continue the sidewalk along 142nd Street all the way back down to the edge of the parcel. So those sidewalks along Douglas and 142nd Street would be constructed as part of this project, and again, that's in an effort to comply with those pedestrian-oriented requirements of the PUD.
I thought that's what I remembered from our comments, so that's good.
Correct.
I guess I'm still a little confused. So we are requiring NAP to connect it from the little piece of gray where it stops there on the west side of the entrance to the sidewalk where it stops on the trail where that goes under the street.
It would extend here to the west and here to the south. I think if I go back to this other, well, let me try to, here we go. So it would extend all the way back down to this property line right here, and it would extend all the way to the west, all the way out to that property line right there with sidewalks. So on the south side of Douglas, right through here, and along 142nd Street down to here.
Sorry, my kids are being loud. So will it connect to the sidewalk that's there on the south side? I guess Adam already asked this, but I'm confused.
Yeah. You are correct that right now the sidewalk comes up and butts to the west property line of NAP properties right now. And so we'll connect up at that location on the south side of Douglas. And then when you go over to 142nd Street, it will connect down to the bridge, which is basically... It would connect down to the bridge, which my screen just went blank, but we can make that connectivity over there. If that isn't on the south end, it looks like there's a parcel in there that's possibly parkland that we might have to deal with, but basically we can make that happen.
Okay, well, I guess I
So
wanted
there'd
to
be
make sure,
connectivity on both ends.
because we have waited probably 20 years to have development here, or 18 maybe. I don't know. I would like to see as many of the connections made as we can, because it is such a, active area for trail use right there.
So I believe that from what we're hearing, I think it will be connected completely, so.
And then
All
it
right.
would be, oh, sorry, Mayor, just one last thing. And then it would be incumbent on us with CIP is if we wanted to avoid having to come off the trail and go across Douglas, it would be CIP that we would extend the trail that currently exists to one of those outlets. That would be for us, correct?
Dave, my
Yes.
thought is go ahead.
I guess I'm still confused exactly what the question is here. Could you?
So my fear is the outlet for the trail that currently exists is on the northern side of Douglas. And I would like to eventually figure out a way that we could come off the trail that doesn't require us coming off Douglas. And to avoid having to cross that street.
Okay, but you can, so the trail on the north side of Douglas, so you can go off the trail on north side of Douglas, go north, come back under the bridge and back up onto the sidewalk on the south side.
Okay.
So I really think now there's a little bit of a jaunt to the north because there's a big grade change between the Douglas sidewalk and the trail bridge and the trail. Mm-hmm. And so, but there is a connection where you can go north, south, under the bridge, back up on the sidewalk on the south. And
oh, I apologize. Yeah, I only thought it was on the north side. I apologize.
All right. Any further comments or questions? If not, then I'd ask for a motion and a second on item 8.3.
A motion by Obrecht. Second by Pogge.
Discussion, please vote. That passes. Then a motion and a second on item 8.4.
A motion by Obrecht. Second by Pogge.
Discussion, please vote.
Please switch my vote to an aye.
Same here.
Updated.
That passes. Then item 8.5.
A motion by Obrecht, second by Pogge.
Discussion, please vote. That passes. All right, thank you. That takes us to the end of our planning and zoning items. Item 9, regular agenda items. We have item 9.1 first is the equipment purchase for the police patrol vehicles and equipment. And Chief Trey Hansen would answer any questions if there are any. If not, ask for a motion in a second.
A motion by Pogge. Second by Russell.
Discussion, please vote. That passes. Item 9.2 is the Aquatic Programs Partnership Agreement with the YMCA of Greater Des Moines. And to introduce this is our Parks and Rec Director, Jan Herkey. Jan?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just a brief recap if there's anybody on the meeting that is wanting to know how we got to this spot. But in March, as you know, the pool was closed due to COVID. At your meeting on the 28th, decision was made to not permanently close the pool, but also a decision to close it at least through 2020 due to the COVID pandemic and keeping our patrons safe. In July, we brought before you a recommendation and a partnership with Goldfish Swim School for swim lessons, and you encouraged us as staff to continue looking for partnerships at other aquatic facilities. So we have had discussions with the YMCA and have negotiated some programs for swim lessons and aquatic fitness at reduced prices. So one of the key things here in our discussions is that the Urbandale residents would not need to be YMCA members to take advantage of these opportunities. And these would be at select YMCA locations in the metro. So what's proposed tonight is, again, for swim lessons and water or aquatic exercise classes. The swim lessons are proposed at a discounted rate of $90 per session, and this is 30-minute sessions for 6 weeks. That's a $30 savings current non-YMCA member rate. So currently, YMCA members can take swim lessons for $60, non-YMCA members for $120. And staff is recommending that the city subsidize Urbandale resident $5 per session. So that would lower the cost to $85 per session. And for aquatic exercise, the YMCA has not provided this opportunity for non-YMCA members before. So we appreciate their willingness to work with us on this. So this is exclusive for Urbandale residents. And they're offering that Urbandale residents could purchase a monthly pass at select locations for $60 per month, and patrons could take up to 3 classes per week. And that would be, again, for $60. Staff is recommending that Urbandale or the city subsidize that monthly pass by $10, lowering it to $50 per month. That is quite similar to the rates that we had provided at the Urbandale pool when we were open for water fitness classes. And again, right now, the proposal is for non-YMCA members, and current YMCA members, water fitness is already included with their membership. In swim lessons, current YMCA members are already getting $60 per session. I do want to mention that obviously YMCA is membership driven, so lap swim and open swim, we had discussions with them about, in particular, lap swim, but that doesn't fit as well with their model because it's a lot tougher to for someone to go into lap swim. They could go to other areas in the YMCA without a membership. So right now the recommendation is for the swim lessons and for water exercise. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you, Jan. Any questions for Jan?
I don't know if I missed it in here or it was in the nitty gritty that I didn't necessarily look at. Which Ys are we talking about? You said select Ys.
Yeah, they had in discussion, right now it's probably between Walnut Creek and the Waukee, and it depends, one, on their availability of instructors and popularity of classes and so forth. So there is a scenario that, say, water exercise might be at Walnut Creek and swim lessons at Waukee. It might be at both. They're just going to be working with their schedule and their staff. But certainly current YMCA members can also be taking advantage of these programs. So it would be at those 2 locations in all likelihood.
So it would not be to the Y that offers those. You wouldn't have, have a choice between Waukee and Walnut Creek.
You cut out a little bit, so I didn't hear that whole thing, Bridget.
So you wouldn't necessarily have a choice. If the Y chose to offer Urbandale subsidized lessons at Walnut Creek, that's where you would have to go.
Yeah, and I'm not positive yet. And again, during our negotiations, they were just working through that. So it is possible it would be at both locations, but that has not yet been determined. So yes, that is a possibility that it would be at one of the locations or another. I do want to mention relevancy to this as well. It's not part of the YMCA discussion, and I don't want to muddy the water here, but I also want to share that we did have discussions with Goldfish Swim School, and because they have a pool that's 4 feet deep and 90 degrees, we had talked about that would be ideal for water aerobics as well. That is also not part of their typical model, but they are working with us, and they will be offering water fitness classes as well. So it's right here in Urbandale at the same price. So that will be another option. Because that does not, they are offering a subsidy for Urbandale residents, but it won't be a requirement for the city to take care of it. That's not something, we're just finalizing that, but it's more informational for you that is another option that patrons will have.
And generally, how are you advertising both of these programs with Goldfish and the Y? I mean, I guess we haven't finalized the Y, but
Yep. I'm glad you asked.
The people that had registered in the past, or how's that work?
Yes, great question. We, like when we negotiated with Goldfish and finalized that, we sent an email out to every one of our patrons, the pool that have participated in the last 2 years. So we will do that again. If this gets approved tonight and finalizing with Goldfish, we will personally send out an email to every one of our patrons. So that's over 1,200 people. So they will receive that information as well. And we will put it out on social media and our website as well. And certainly the YMCA and Goldfish will be doing their own marketing.
Great. And I hope months or something, you could give us I don't know, time has no concept right now, but give us an update on how it's going. I don't know if Goldfish has started enrolling people yet, or but I'd love to know how this is working after it gets a little bit.
Yes, I'd be happy to provide you an update.
Thank you, Jan.
Jan, this is
Any
Adam.
further?
Yeah, and so if you're a current Y member or want to become a Y member, is there any subsidy from the city to participate? I know some of these programs are included, but I could see people saying, hey, I'm already participating in the Y, where's my money?
Yeah, that's a great question. Staff as well as AJ, we had talked about that, and because one of the things we want to focus on is this is an aquatic discussion. It isn't necessarily a fitness club discussion. And we had also talked about the challenges. If you start subsidizing memberships, then we have a number of different fitness clubs throughout Urbandale, and that would be a larger discussion. That if it's something the council wants us to pursue, and make it more of a fitness club discussion rather than an aquatic discussion, we certainly can do that. But that at this time and for this proposal tonight is we have discussed it, and that's one of the reasons that we didn't include YMCA members. But certainly by the direction of council, we certainly can look into that if that's something you want us to pursue.
Yeah, no, I wasn't advocating that. It was just more, I could see people seeing these prices and going, hey, if I only do the aquatic classes, this may be cheaper than my Y membership. And
certainly,
so they may end up dropping some members to their detriment to satisfy this, and that wouldn't be good for them long term, obviously.
And that was, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Adam, because that was certainly a discussion with the YMCA is goals. Obviously, they want to help us, but they are membership driven as well. So an individual membership at the YMCA is $60. So they didn't want their current members to be dropping their membership to take advantage of these classes. So they certainly were gracious in negotiating and making some reasonable prices, but they're needing to keep in business as well.
All right. Any further comments or questions? If not, then I'll ask for a motion in a second.
I have a motion by Obrecht, second by Blake.
Discussion, please vote. And that passes. All right, thank you. All right, that takes us to the end of our regular agenda. Item 10, Mayor and Council items. Dave.
Did you move my nay to a yes?
Yes, we did.
Okay, I don't see it on my screen, so.
It showed up initially, but then I believe Nicole got it changed, so. David?
Yes, I want to thank the Public Works crew. This afternoon about 1 o'clock, we heard some big heavy equipment come down our street, and they gobbled up all of the debris alongside my street. And we're very grateful. I talked with a couple of the guys, and they said they put in close to 90 hours already. They're working just long shifts and doing a tremendous job. So I took a picture of it and I sent it on to you, Dave, and AJ, and to Tim Stovey. So kudos and keep up the good work. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dave. Matt?
Yes, actually, that was kind of what I was going to say. Kudos. It's to me, this is a kudos day to staff between all the building ordinances, the aquatic stuff. I mean, everything, and then to cleaning up. Just kudos to staff overall. You have been doing a tremendous work and tremendous job, and we probably don't say that enough from our perspective. Also, for those that were worried, because this did come up in our Thursday meeting. I tested negative for COVID, but though I do have to quarantine because I interacted with somebody that was known positive, so I have not left my house in 4 to 5 days. But so my wife is already going stir crazy, so this is fun. But that for the rest of the council, don't worry, I was not infectious at them.
Thanks, Matt. Ron.
I'll just join in thanking staff and also note that I know the mayor's the executive function here, but you look kind of lonely sitting in chambers all by yourself.
I do miss all of you up here. This is a lonely dais tonight, so thanks, Ron. Bridget.
Mic problems there. Again, thank you to staff for all the hard work on the storm cleanup and building permits. And I know we've run Jan all over the place on the pool for months. So I appreciate just seeing some of these creative partnerships in our community coming into just wanted to update you with the DART Commission. They've pretty much resumed full service to pre-COVID levels. There's still some things that are up in the air regarding the busing that they do for Des Moines Public. But for the most part, they are back to regular scheduling, and we're continuing to do some long-term planning and discussions of the tax system there. Nothing to report yet, but I think eventually DART's going to be coming around to the city council the member communities and doing some presentations. But again, that got delayed due to COVID. But if you have any questions, they're doing amazing work. Oh, and the most exciting thing is we will be getting electric buses, most likely next month. I think they will and rolling those out into not production, but rolling them out into service. So I'll be sure to pass on that information, but that's very exciting for the whole area.
All right, thanks. And Adam.
Yeah, I just love continuing to see streets getting cleaned up and recovering from derecho, new term we get to learn past couple weeks. But also want to wish the mayor an early happy birthday tomorrow. So as you celebrate circling the sun one more time.
There you go. Thank you. And I do want to model. I'm
declare it Bob Andewig Day as your deputy mayor.
Well, I certainly think that'll be in order, but it'll probably be a split vote.
I also just want to show, encourage continued mask use, and I just want to show, right before I walked in here tonight, AJ gave me the first 2 models of the official City of Urbandale masks. So I'm wearing an official City of Urbandale mask. AJ has his right there, so we will have those to issue out. But we got the official Urbandale logo on there. So again, folks, it's still the only vaccine we have right now. So let's keep wearing masks and let's keep respecting each other and being safe. So with that, I'll ask for a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved.
Real quickly, Mr. Mayor, I will drop a couple of these in the mail to each one of you, and that way you'll get it in the mail. I don't want to violate the quarantine, but we'll drop them in the mail, and then if we could, we'd like to get a picture, someone in your house, take a picture of you, send it to us, and then we'd like to put together a public service announcement saying that the mayor and the members of the City Council of Urbandale advise you to mask up. And we'll put that out there on social media. So I'll drop 2 of these into the mail. We have them hidden at a special place here at City Hall. If you lose them or they get damaged or you auction them off for something really good, let me know and I can replenish them for you.
Hey, AJ, you can save the city a couple bucks. I'll allow a touchless porch delivery from you if you want.
I'll be back in about 10 minutes. How's that?
That sounds good.
I'll honk my horn, come out and get them. I'll have my mask on.
You just throw them on the front, pull you in your convertible and throw them on.
Okay.
We had a motion and a second to adjourn, I believe, don't we? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
So, Steve, why are you wearing Kentucky colors?